Hey, my name is Bree. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make two types of hanging floral accents. For the first type we're going to be going over today, you're going to need a few different things. The first thing you're going to need is some of these stir straws. I have a lot of them. I bought a whole box. These ones are just 5 inches long, so you're going to need 4 regular sized ones, and then you're going to take 4 more and you're going to cut them in half. You'll also need some floral wire, some wire cutters, a needle. You might need 1 more straw cut in half to use to push things through, some embroidery thread. It doesn't really matter what color it is as long as you're okay spray painting over it. I use one of these threaders. If you don't have one, you can use floss. And you might need some glue sticks and a hot glue gun. And finally, you're going to need whatever fake flowers you can find. I have a lot of them. I have a bad habit of collecting them. So just whatever you have. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and be using some of these fake air plants. But you could do something more similar to this, or you could use larger flowers. It really is just up to what you decide to do. You're going to start with your 8-hole straws, and then you're going to take 4 of them and cut them in half. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it might line up a little bit better if you do measure them. Okay, so now that I have cut 4 of my straws in halves, we're going to go ahead and start building the top piece. I'll just call it the top pyramid for now because that's kind of what it's going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and take some embroidery thread that I have, and I'm just going to measure out enough that it will go through these straws at least twice. If you have extra, it's a good thing. That way you can hang it up later. I'm going to be using green thread because I don't really care about it. I don't use it a ton. And then it's going to be painted over anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this to size and I'll be back. Alright, so I realized as I was cutting this, it's probably a little over like an arm span. So if I hold it all the way up, it's going to be just a little over what I have there. You're going to start by making a knot that's big enough that it's not going to go through the end of the straw. You want it to be big enough so that it won't go through and it'll hold things in place. Okay, so I've tied like a pretty sizable knot. I'm going to go ahead and thread this through a needle. If you're using something similar to like bamboo string, it's a little bit harder, it's not as easily pliable. You probably don't need to thread it into a needle, but because this is so soft, I'm going to go ahead and just use the needle to make things a little bit easier. Okay, so now that I have my needle threaded, I'm going to go ahead and put it through the first long straw. You might find that it's kind of difficult to put this through, so I went ahead and took one of my other straws and I cut it in half. I'm just going to use that to push this through to the other end. And once I see the needle, I'm going to go ahead and pull on that. Oh, she came unthreaded, and that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull out my extra piece of straw and just set it aside for now. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just pull this all the way through to the end to make sure that it doesn't go through, and mine did. So I'm going to go ahead and tie a few more times just to make sure that it stays put instead of going through again. So now she's stuck, she's not gonna come through. So we are gonna go ahead and take one of our half straws and we're just gonna push this through real quick. And then we're gonna take another long straw. So once you pull this through, you should have a triangle. You're going to want to pull it tight to make sure that things stay in place. And then since I'm using a needle, I'm going to go ahead and just put the needle through the knot that we made so that things stay in place. If you aren't using a needle, that's totally okay. What I usually do is just tie another knot around the original knot to keep things in place and make sure that things aren't moving around too much. Alright, so now that I've made a pretty tight triangle, we're going to go ahead and add another whole straw to it. from there, we're gonna go ahead and add another short straw. And from here, to make sure that things are staying together, we're actually gonna thread this through the short straw that we already have put in. So I'm just gonna feed this through really quick. Make sure that your thread doesn't get tangled, otherwise you're gonna have an issue. Okay, so now that I have 2 out of the 4 triangles that we need, I'm gonna go ahead and add another short straw. And then the last long straw. Cool. So at this point, I have 3 triangles, and I obviously need 1 more to make the final pyramid. So I'm gonna go ahead and do 1 more knot through, excuse me, 1 more loop through the original knot to make sure that things stay in place. So from here it's gonna get a little tricky. We're gonna have to go back through one of the longer straws. So this is where, if you haven't been using one, the push through straw might help. So I'm just gonna go through the one on the edge. Push that all the way through. Alright, so now we're gonna add another short straw. Okay, so now that I've pushed this through the short one, we're gonna go back and join these together by putting the needle back through this other short straw. Alright, and we have completed the top part of the triangle. So from here, we're gonna thread on 2 of the short straws. And then this is gonna be the first part of the bottom. So this is gonna connect to the other side to make a point. We're gonna go back through one of the other short straws to make sure that it stays in place. Okay, awesome. So from here, we're gonna go ahead and thread another one of the short straws. And if you're using a needle, you can go ahead and put the needle through the thread that is peeking out right here to hold things in place. And then you're gonna thread on the last short straw. So I'm gonna go back through one of the other short straws real quick just to hold things in place. And we have just completed our geometric hanger. From here, if you have a lot of extra, you can run it up through the nearest long straw. So you can create kind of a hook, just like I've done with this one, because I had quite a bit left over. And so let's have like a nice long hanger. For this one though, I'm probably just gonna go ahead and I'll just tie it off right where it is, and then I can make a hanger for it later. So I'm just threading the needle through the nearest piece of thread that's exposed, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and tie this into a knot a few times, and then I'll trim this here. And she's good. I'll just have to make a hanger for it later, but that's the basic shape done. You might notice that it's a little bit squishy, and by that I mean it moves around a little too easily. From there, what we can do is add some of this floral wire. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut off little pieces. I'm gonna cut off 8 of them. So what you're gonna do is just fold them in half basically, but try to make sure that the edge isn't super round. You want it to be a little sharp so that it doesn't stick out too much. And from there, what I like to do is just put them into every single corner like that. And then you'll just keep going. Okay, so I ended up cutting 12 because I didn't like how these edges were kind of moving around too much. So I ended up putting some in there, and then I have 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. So 12 total. From here, I'm gonna go ahead and trim up the top so that there's not all this thread hanging off, and then I'm gonna spray paint it. And you might find that you wanna glue these in to make sure that they stay. I'm probably just gonna super glue or hot glue mine to make sure that they are good. Otherwise, you can just leave them if you feel like they're gonna be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and glue mine before I end up spray painting it though. So while I'm waiting for those to dry, I'm gonna go ahead and look at a couple different floral pieces that I might want to add to them. For the first one that I did, I want to go ahead and just use a really simple air plant. I think it would look really natural and really minimalistic. For the second one, I want to go ahead and use one of these succulents. It won't look as natural because it's not meant to be out of dirt. But I think that it'll add a nice touch of color with the center, and it's a little bit different than the other one. Alright, so I've gone ahead and painted both of these. Both of them are nice and gold. So what I will do now that I have picked out my flower pieces, I'm just going to very gently tuck these in. And then what I'll end up doing with this one is, since it kind of wants to pop up like that, I'll go ahead and just glue it down into the bottom so that it doesn't move around too much. There we go. Okay, so moving on to the second type. For this one, we're gonna need a few different things than the first one. The first thing we're gonna use is this bird cage. It's wire, and I just ended up picking it up from Daiso. It's really cheap. It just pops open like that, and it already has a hanger on it, so you don't have to make one for this one. You could technically just hang it up if you wanted to. You're also going to need some scissors, some felt, a hot glue gun, and some glue sticks. And then you're going to need a lot of fake flowers. Again, it doesn't really matter what you end up using. You could do something similar to these again. I probably will use some of these ferns and longer cream flowers, maybe with some of these pink ones. So to start, we're gonna go ahead and cut a circle out of the felt. This is gonna go on the inside so that when you're looking up at it, you don't see all the flower like stems and everything. So what I'm gonna do is just take a colored pencil, and I'm gonna use as little as I can, just trace around really quick. So I have my circle. What I'm gonna do is cut out a little smaller than that so that it doesn't sit and like push against the bars. It's just gonna sit right inside. Okay, once you've cut out your circle, go ahead and fit it into whatever you're using. So it looks like mine needs to be cut down just a little bit. The edges are kind of sitting a little too close to the bars and kind of going outside of them. So I'm just gonna pull it back out and trim it again. You can do that as many times as you need to make sure that it fits correctly. Okay, so I went ahead and trimmed it down a few times if you can't see that. And now I feel really happy with how it looks. When I look at it from the bottom, I can't see anything sticking out from the side. So we're gonna go ahead and glue this in on the edges. Okay, so I've glued this in. I found that the easiest way to put the glue on is to put the felt in and then gently lift from the side to add the glue instead of gluing the whole thing and then putting it in. Don't do that. You're gonna burn your finger and it hurt. So from here, I'm gonna go ahead and just open this back up if you closed it, which I did to make sure that it looked correct. And then we're gonna start kind of placing where we want our flowers to go. So I'm just gonna pick out some flowers real quick. Okay, so I've gone ahead and picked out some flowers. And what I'm gonna just start doing, really basically, is just start putting things into the cage to see kind of how I like the fit. And then once I have something that I'm really happy with, I'll go ahead and glue it in and we'll be set. So as you can kind of see, I've gone ahead and just arranged everything how I think would look nice. Just holding up to see what I think it would look like. And I am pretty happy with it. I'm gonna go ahead and change a few things. but now that I know what it looks like, I'm gonna go ahead and just start gluing everything down. Alright, so I went ahead and glued everything in. I'm really happy with the placement. I ended up having to move some things around, add a couple things, but I think it looks really good. So when I hang it up, just a little floral bird cage.